Oh, wait.
Huh?
The reconfigure record path cannot be opened.
OBS issue?
Yeah, I think there may be an OBS issue, but I'm just gonna double check. I think it won't record it to the computer, but it's still gonna record it to YouTube, so I think we're good to go.
Okay.
I am just going to go for it. Boop, 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 boop. So I have shared that in the chat. We've got our nice Arc 5 music playing. No Escape, the Crime and Mystery Edit by CO.AG Music. Oh wait, did I put that in the right... I put that in the general. Yeah. Cool, and then I will do... 1. Cool. And, yeah, we have our artwork here. This is the first time you're seeing it, I think. Do you have the stream open?
I do have the stream open. That's Faultline with Purity in the background, right?
Yeah, and then the bartender as well. But
Super
yeah,
cool.
I think the fault line thing is interesting because like I wasn't sure what to picture when they were describing fault line a lot of the time.
Yeah. Is
Um,
this specifically the scene where she's given Tattletale the stink eye, or?
yeah, this is when she's walking past the table, intentionally taking
Excellent.
the long way. So Vale says, "Hi all, Vic is here. No speed draw today. Unacceptable," says the artist.
Mhm.
2 plus 4 times 5. I'm here. Unfortunately, my laptop is going to restart soon, but I'll return after that's done. She's
Mhm.
sneering. Okay. So we've got Kevin here for
Hello.
5.1 and 5.2.
Hello, hello.
There is potentially some weird stream issue happening. Hard to display with a mask on, yeah. But I think that we're going to be fine as long as everything's going out. I switched top chat to live chat so that, we can hear all the most swearingest commentary from all our friends. Greg's here, says hello. Let's see here. All right. Well, I think we're going to do the audience participation reminder. I don't think there's any new readers in the audience this week since Em will not be attending. But the new readers question was, who are you most curious about from the Somers Rock meeting? And for the whole audience, the question is, talk about your reaction to the Brian-Rachel interaction in 5.2. I mean, I said it slightly different in the actual question, but I don't want to limit your answers. It's a broad question.
Cool.
And then yeah, Kevin, if you want to start us off on our themes a little bit, we
Uh-huh.
got a couple this week.
Yeah, so the first theme we'll be covering today is kind of just the posturing or big dogging that's going on at this meeting between villains. Just throughout these chapters, there's a lot of shows of strength and a lot of little power plays throughout the chapter from all sides. We know, because we have the Undersider's point of view, that they're hiding weaknesses. So it's cool to go into all of the covert and overt ways that they're doing this.
Vic says, "I'm most curious about the hottie in the top hat." Yeah, I can imagine. And then I had included continuing escalation as a theme because I was thinking about how there are 35 people confirmed dead, and that's just the ones that like the authorities have found, etc., etc. There's also the 4 from the fight with the Undersiders, and then there's the escalation of like, I think that we meet more new capes in this chapter than we've known thus far. Let's count up who we knew thus far. We knew the 5 Undersiders. We knew Armsmaster, Glory Girl, Panacea, and then there's like 6 wards. So that
Hmm.
puts us at 14. And then there was Uber Leet Bakuda. So that put us at a total of 17 previous capes, and this chapter introduces 19 capes. So that's literally more than we knew up to this point in the story. Um,
Dang, I didn't realize there were so many just at the villains meeting.
yeah, it's nuts. This chapter can be very overwhelming. That's why I put a section in the bottom where I just like list who's on what team so we can kind of discuss that so that maybe someone listening back to this who's like a new reader could be like, okay, so they're with them and whatever. And so Greg says, I'm curious about this moist fellow. He's clearly he's the Dr. Horrible crossover. Um Oh, did I not say Lung? Okay, so Lung makes it 18. I thought I did say Lung, but whichever way, it's still 19
Yeah.
versus a lower number. Uh, but yeah, Moist is mentioned in this chapter as one of the Archer's Bridge merchants, as Greg is bringing up, and that character does not appear anywhere else in the book. But it's not just like a one accidental type out or anything, because it's listed the same way for the character tag at the bottom. Um, and in the other chapter, the character tag actually is Mush. I think it's either an oversight on Wildbow's part because it's so like long between now and the next time they're relevant, or uh, Moist. Oh yeah, 2+4 said it. I always thought Moist name was changed to Mush. Usually in the character tags, even if a character's name is changed, they'll like still get listed the same way. I guess. I guess there are some characters. I don't know. I can think of at least one example where they change the character's name and they're just like, nope, same character tag. Um.
I don't mean to sidetrack or distract,
Oh
but
yeah.
what power classification would is moist or would mush be?
So
Like, is
Mush
he just
Mush is a changer that has to have like I think that has to have like stuff to absorb onto his body, but then like changes form while absorbing it to sort of mimic the trash and like whatever else. And he can use like sand, I guess, but I don't know. He gets owned way too quickly every time he fights that we never really see. I put him
it's
on my list of like, unless I'm, maybe he's just like really bad at the power or he's fighting really good people or something, but like it just seems like he has one of the worst powers of the whole series. But um okay, so Vale says Moist is going to be the pro tag for the third parahuman serial. Clearly. 2.4 or 2+4 times 5 says he absorbs crap, literally. Um
great powers.
And I guess also said, because someone pointed out to Wildbow the Dr. Horrible character in the comments. Okay, so it was like a literal. Okay, gotcha. Um, it's weird that it's still moist in the chapter online then, and even in the character tag. Um, that he never changed that. But anyway, so moving on slightly to the 5.1 summary. Um, Victoria wrote the first portion of this, so imagine that this is mostly in her voice. Uh, but do you want to start it off, or do you want me to jump right in?
Go ahead.
So this chapter begins a week since we last saw Taylor. In the space between, and this is my little insert here, in the space between two chapters, we've doubled the amount of in-universe time that's passed. It's like a time skip. Um, I mean, the first 4 arcs could have all happened again in the last week. Lisa and Brian have visited several more times, even brought Alec and Rachel on one occasion, and Taylor was like really glad that her dad wasn't there. Um, Taylor's now aware of her cape name that she was given by the PRT Skitter, and has been in articles surrounding the Bakuda fight. Lung's also been spreading her name around town, so, looking for her. And Taylor's not a huge fan of her new name, but to quote from the book, but I didn't love any of the names I'd come up with, so I could cope. You know, she can always
At
cope.
this Yeah, at this point, has she fielded any of the other names she was thinking about in the story? I can't remember.
No, they called her Bug, and then in the fourth arc, it like pointedly, it almost felt like Wildbow wasn't quite sure what to do with it. They didn't call her literally anything. No one addressed her directly for a whole arc
It's
while they
just
were in
creepy bug
costume.
girl.
Yeah, creepy bug girl was what Bakuda said, but like none of her teammates even said bug, the placeholder name from Arc 3.
Yeah. The chat Vic says Taylor's great at coping,
Yeah,
which is yeah.
exactly. Oh boy. Taylor is super angry about her name. She wanted Flitter to the butterfly Disney princess, says Vale. Exactly, that's what she was going
Yeah.
for.
It's all about the butterflies. All right. So, picking up from that, so the gang, the Undersiders, step into Somer's Rock. It's a hole in the wall bar in a bad part of town. They describe the interior as like dim, dingy, and depressing. And when they get there, there's only three others inside. There's a young waitress and a pair of twins behind the bar. There's a bunch of tables pulled together like for a meeting, but the Undersiders head to a corner booth. And Taylor notes that she's referring to them by their cape names at the moment since they're all in costume.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like an understated thing, but she's still like super out of it from her concussion. I think I mentioned that further down. Um, so you'll see her like going over stuff in her head, like, "Oh, that was weird," and like in a more pointed way than normal, where she's like trying to focus on stuff.
Hmm.
Vic offers the name. How about Butterfly Knife? I love how aggressive that is for a cape name, and it's not even that far out of the norm. There are some way more aggro cape names.
Yeah.
Um, even on hero sites. Um, Here it says the depressed ass waitress approaches the table and sets her notebook on the table and stares at Taylor without speaking. Taylor, kind of rude AF here. Taylor explains that the waitress is deaf and to order in writing, but the damage is done because the girl gave me an ugly look as she walked away with our orders. Taylor obvi didn't think this through because her mask covers her mouth.
Is this one of those just like, oh, if you're in the know, you're in the know things? Like everyone that goes to this bar knows that she's deaf.
I feel like it must be, yeah.
Yeah.
Come into my bar, talk to me like I'm not deaf. That's what that young woman sounds like.
I also I always found that it was kind of funny that like they're going to this villain bar with some of the most dangerous people in town, and Taylor just orders a Coke.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh
I
hell yeah.
like I get it, Coke is delicious, but it just doesn't like fit the vibe in my mind.
Yeah. Well,
It just
doesn't
straight up,
Tattletale gets a T, right?
yeah, black tea, right?
I guess that's slightly more on brand, but it just for like a villain thing. But I feel like I don't know. There, there's not much that would make these people respect her. I don't think. For me, it's like, wait, why are you getting a drink at all? Like your mask makes drinking nearly impossible.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Wait, is she just like pouring it through her mask then, or did she just like not touch it while she was there?
I think she just orders it, then doesn't touch it.
That's oh man. We have messages in the chat. So from 2+4 Pro, she's present at the villain meeting. Concussion, amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see here. Yeah, we got Vale saying, Clockroach to let the wards know who she wants to date. Oh God, yeah, naming herself Clockroach, gross.
Ugh.
Um, and then Vic says, Coke, say hi first. Jesus. And then Taylor, so bold, straight up ordering cocaine. I'd order milk,
Honestly,
says Vic.
honestly, if Taylor wasn't so against drugs, I think she's hardcore enough to just like do a line of coke in this situation.
To fit in, yeah, yeah. She'd be
Yeah.
like, ah. But they're trying to show that they're both simultaneously mad dogs and restrained about it. Not like the ABB. So
Yeah,
they gotta maintain a balance of some
it's not the
sort.
right vibe to set.
Yeah, I don't
Instead,
think
just like
cocaine's quite right.
just slowly sip milk and make eye contact with Kaiser while you're doing it. How you establish dominance.
Oh, cause then you're the cat. You defeat
That's
him.
a deep yes. That's a deep cut.
It's
All right,
only as deep as this chapter.
fair enough. All
Anyway,
right.
so
The
mhm.
so the gang's punctuality, like I definitely got the vibes that they like showed up early for a party here, but yeah, they're there first, so they get the privilege of watching all the other guests enter. Um,
Sorry,
so
Bill.
first,
Bill put a really good. The hardcore villain order is Coke, warm, please, no ice.
oh god,
True, you gotta be a true villain to ever do that.
yeah. All right, yeah. So the Undersiders are sitting there, watching everyone else come in. The first group that comes in is the leader of Empire 88, Kaiser, who Victoria has noted as Caden's baby daddy, with some hot blondes on each arm. He's wearing his metal armor with crown, rolling in like a badass. He's also coming in with the blonde twins, Fenja and Menja, who are both wearing Valkyrie armor.
I
Taylor
think
knows
I
from
think
her.
they're pronounced Fenya and Menya.
That would probably make sense.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no
Yeah.
problem.
So Taylor knows from her research that the two of them can grow into 3-story tall brutes. Kind of following after that, we get Purity making her entrance. She's following close, presumably with her newly gifted Empire 88 gang. Quote, Taylor is shook because she had thought Purity was solo now. And then Kaiser goes to sit at the head table in the middle of the room with the other members of Empire 88 sitting around him.
Yeah, and he's had so she also mentions that I forgot to write a insert about this here, but she also mentions that Knight and Fogg had moved to be a duo in Boston and
Yeah.
left Brockton Bay, but they're back now. And then she doesn't mention Krieg. He's
He's
there.
just there.
I always have a hard time remembering his power because spoilies, Krieg isn't that important to the story. So yeah,
Actually, I don't
I don't really know
remember
what
his
he
powers.
does. I he's not the one who regenerates. That's Alabaster, and maybe he's fast and strong. I think he's like a runs up and punches you guy. I
Okay.
think we get to see him fight one time, so we'll see him then in Arc
All
South.
right.
Anyway, let's see here. So Coil enters next, all alone. He's tall and skeletal in skin tight, totally encompassing costume. It's black with a snake design spanning the body. When he sits across from Kaiser, Taylor asks Tattletale about him. Tattletale sweats nervously. Tattletale says she doesn't know his power, but he's one of the most powerful villains in town, using strategy to control half of downtown. He employs ex-military with top-notch gear. And looking back over at the chat, Tattletale is getting so much information.
Yes.
Um, 2 plus 4 times 5 says Krieg has kinetic manipulation over a wide range, according to the official cast page. I'm
Oh,
not certain what that means. If you can put like an explanation of what that does in principle. Um, and then Vic says, Tattletale really talking up Coil right now. He's
oh
so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Giving the whole you know Mario voice actor thing. Uh, he's so cool. I can't
He's
help
so
myself.
cool.
Anyway, kicking it back to you.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Chris Pratt as Mario now, and it's hard to focus.
I know. It's my fault.
It's okay. I'll just let that out of my mind and try not to think about Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. Um,
Damn you.
okay. So the next group that rolls in is Faultline's crew. So they are mercenaries. Taylor knows Faultline from her research, but doesn't let us in on her knowledge at this point. She is, quote, followed by 2 weirdos and 2 normal people. Of the weirdos, it's Neuter and Gregor. So Neuter is neon orange with a 5-foot prehensile tail, and Gregor the snail is white-skinned and mildly translucent to the point where you can see his organs. They describe him as morbidly obese with barnacles in the place of acne. Just a real swell-looking guy. Taylor noticed that they have matching tattoos looking like an upside-down omega. It's actually something I caught rereading this chapter or listening to this chapter earlier is uh, Taylor notes the matching tattoos as if like Neuter and Gregor are close, not knowing what the tattoos are from, which is pretty
Right,
interesting
right.
to me.
It's just something that's not widely known, and like when you've read the story, you like obviously know what the tattoos
Yeah,
are like right off the bat, but it's just not widespread enough that even with her Cape research, she recognized the symbol.
yeah.
Um, Neuter, not like that. Although I did think it was that when I first read the story 2 + 4 × 5 because like that word doesn't just mean to like spay a cat, but like you can neuter the opposition. Like he makes people pass out like it's nobody's business. Um, And then 2 + 4 × 5 had already hit us with the really amazing joke a minute ago, which made me laugh while you were talking, which was, OMG, imagine if Chris Pratt played Coyle.
Oh
And
no.
Greg said, basically comes out to having brute rating with some fringe benefits about Krieg's power. Okay, so it's like I thought. He runs around and he punches people. And he can probably run a little faster with his like kinetic manipulation while running or whatever. So yeah, he's kind of
Mhm.
fast. He's kind of super strong. But it's spelled newt because he's shaped like a newt. Yeah, exactly. I know. Um, and then Vale says it'd be so funny if Taylor thought the friend tattoo was super cool and got matching up down Omega at the end of that all their friends compatriots got them too. Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
That would be a development.
What a
Um,
disaster.
just before I forget, there's also the 2 normies in the group. They're named Labyrinth and Spitfire. I don't really mention too much about them at this point, but
It's
they are
true.
there.
They happen to be there. Um, 2 + 4 × 5 says should choose her own tattoo idea, like a swan on the back of her hand. Yeah, what a great idea. Um, Matching tattoos in this universe. Taylor notices Faultline take the long way around the room to sneer at Tattletale as she approaches the Kaiser table. Taylor is like, "Whoa, what's going on there?" Regent says Tattletale and Faultline have a feud that escalated when Faultline yoinked Spitfire from them. So that's our next little tidbit about Spitfire. And according to Regent, Tattletale hates Faultline because Faultline is smarter than her. And that's when Tattletale kicks Regent under the table. Anyway,
Regent's really funny. I like him. It's like kind of implied that Tattletale and Faultline had beef before Spitfire, right? Like they're just people that don't get along.
yeah.
You know? Hence the evil eye.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the art for this today.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
So this moment is the art. This is a very good call out, Kevin. That's fault line going to the table. Um,
Also, she's like in her mid-20s at this point, right?
yeah. So she's a lot
Yeah.
older. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, because like I don't know. I feel like the difference between me at Taylor's age of 15 versus mid 20s of even as young as 24 is pretty incredible difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So then Tattletale ends up giving some more context to Faultline's crew. So she explains to them that they're mercenary villains, and like for all her beef with Faultline, she does call out Faultline for like both being a good mercenary, but also saying that Faultline has a skill for finding people's hidden strengths. Um, she shines some light on Neuter and Gregor. I'll just read a passage from the chapter. Um, so just see those two guys? When it came to powers, they got a bad roll of the dice. Became freaks that couldn't hope to pass in normal society, wound up homeless or living in the sewers. There's a story behind it, but they became a team. She made them effective, and they've only messed up 1 or 2 jobs so far. Gotcha, I said. Impressive. This is Taylor speaking. Then back to Lisa. Keep in mind, though, we haven't screwed up any. We're 100%. And then I think Alex says this. They've done
Mm-hmm.
something like 3 times as many jobs as us, though. So they've been around longer.
Yeah, yeah, and then Tattletale defends their group as well and goes back to saying, um, like, but we haven't screwed up any, and that's what's important. And she's like stressing this with them, and it's pretty clear that she's just as like image conscious as Gru is, which I think you mentioned in your stuff later. She's really
Mhm.
on the same page as he is. So,
Yep.
yeah, but Gru makes sure the team is okay with him joining the table and sits between Faultline and Coil. And I put my own note here. I think this is a good moment for showing the general differences in leadership style between the Undersiders and the other groups. They're the only leaderless team, and like even though they pretend to have a leader, he still checks with them that he can leave and like go present himself this way. Um, oh, and Vic said in the chat, fault line, bullying a 16-year-old. Uh,
Yeah.
2 plus 4 times 5 said living in the sewers, TMNT style. I was thinking much more sadly about like Morlock style
Oh,
from X-Men, and like the one comic I can think of that's like really nuts from their perspective is like the Morlocks splintered into 2 groups, and like this group just trying to sort of escape and survive, like they're like fighting to the death against all these people who are like killing them, and then they get to the surface and then are immediately the remaining people get gunned down from like a cop, like literally a cop. um this is from like the early 2000s, and it's just like, ah, geez, but that is all Morlock stories.
that's a bummer.
Yeah, yeah,
But
X-Men has
probably
some real bummers.
probably the realistic outcome in that situation.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
So uh, after Faultline's crew, the next group that arrives is Skidmark, Moist, and Squealer, which are the merchants. The room is like clearly disgusted by their arrival, and Taylor comments that they're hardcore addicts and dealers that just happen to have superpowers. Um, she also like goes out of her way to say that they are unattractive, which is pretty funny to me. Anyways, Skidmark is black with chapped lips, and as he goes to take a seat at the table, Kaiser just kicks the chair out away from him. Um, Kaiser then tells Skidmark that he can sit in a booth in a calm but threatening voice. Uh, Skidmark is like calling him out, asking him if it's because he's black, but Kaiser says it's because he and his team are. Kaiser says it's because Skidmark and his team are losers that aren't worth talking to, and it's not because he's black.
Yeah.
Which I think in universe here, I don't know. It wasn't clear to me like which one it was because I think everyone does really dislike the merchants here, but with Kaiser, it's
Yeah,
probably both.
it's probably both with Kaiser. It's hard to say, um because I think that everyone else at the meeting is either like full covered or a white person. So like we don't see him interact with anyone who's, because like Gru is black but is full covered and like a shadow person who I guess you might be able to know he's black, but I don't know. He's like a smudge in reality.
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see here. Well, we got 2 plus 4 times 5 saying, fortunately, Worm is a much more optimistic story than X Men. Right? Right? And then Vale says,
Right.
I read about a study done like 30-ish years ago related to leadership positions at IBM. They found one significant statistic relevant measure. The leaders were 90% more likely to be over 6 feet tall. Brian is a tall guy. Default visualization for humans could be leader. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
He's not just tall, he's like a big guy, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so, um, oh, are we here? Or
no. Yeah.
okay, sorry, I got confused for a second. So Skidmark points out Gru, who's sitting at the main table, arguing that he doesn't even know this guy's name. Faultline defends him by TLDRing the Undersider's recent accomplishments and commenting that he most likely has good information about the ABB. Faultline asks Skidmark what he's done to earn a seat at the table. When Skidmark starts to respond, Gru interrupts. And this is Gru full big dogging. So this is all the posturing, and Gru's getting some points with the group, I think. He is the biggest dog. Uh, you hold nothing, Gru answered, raising his voice, his powers warping it. You're cowards that hold on to the areas nobody else cares about, making drugs and selling them to children. And then Skidmark's very insightful remark, we sell to everyone, not just. And then Gru says, find a booth. Gru's echoing voice interrupted him. Yeah, so pretty good little moment.
Yeah. Good characterization that Skidmark thinks that that's a defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my god. What an idiot. Oh, and then Vic says Gru putting on a white guy accent for the meeting. Um, well, it's.
Probably.
I mean, I've been trying to get you to watch. Sorry to bother you for ages. It's that movie in action. Um, he has to use his white voice for the sales, and it's compromising his morals. Um, Vale says tall big guy is leader unless proven otherwise. Not tall big guy have to prove is leader. That's the lizard brain human reaction. Uh, huh. I guess that's like the Wolverine dynamic where he'd be the not tall big guy. Um, Although his
Hmm.
opposition is like a tall skinny guy, but he does have a laser for a face. So that's like being a big guy, right? Having a laser for a face. I don't know. I need some input, Kevin.
It took me half a second to realize who you were talking about, but yeah, I think having a laser for a face makes you a big guy.
Okay, so his opposition is tall big guy. So this is like a common dynamic in storytelling then. Um, I think Vale's putting their finger on something here. Um,
I have
okay.
a random
Oh
sorry, I have
yeah.
a random aside for the
Mm-hmm.
white guy accent. The guy who DMs for us, he is from Sri Lanka and he works as a lawyer. And just to help with business, he ended up like learning how to do a Texan accent because, as I was told, it made people trust him more. The problem is like he has a really hard time turning it off now. So now when he does like DM narrations, it's all in a Texan accent. It's very unexpected.
You have to you have to do all your swords and sorcery in Texas.
Yeah, that's all. Sorry.
Oh my god. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Um so here's my changeover point for when Vic stopped writing. The last couple things were Skidmark makes a few crude remarks before heading to a booth. And then I literally forgot we meet the travelers here. And this is exactly where the handoff to me writing happened on this summary. And I didn't think Vic would be here, but apparently we get the honor of the presence. So we'll have. I was saying in my outline, we'll have to wait for future chapters to hear Vic swoon over Trickster. Uh, Next best only to Alec and the top dog Amy.
I'm not trying to start any beef here, but I that is a questionable top 3 to me. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just the Amy part that's getting me.
um
Sorry.
Vale says, "Oh man, you should tell him Gilbert Gottfried accent is comforting as a DM if he can learn accents."
Is that comforting? I feel like that would raise my heart rate.
I would be like, "Ah!" Vic says, "I was so excited I passed out. All three combined is so sus." Yeah, it really is. If it was one of them, but all three, oh Vic,
Yeah.
um, I need to reevaluate my values. Oh man,
All right. I can
problematic faves for days. Oh, and just so
I'll
you know, this is I had to listen to a little audio clip to know, but it's Samudi is how you pronounce that.
okay. Actually, I guess I'll ask after, but I'll take from here. So, as we're talking about the travelers get introduced here, their leader is Trickster. He has a black costume with a red mask, and he gives Taylor a Baron Samudi
Mm-hmm.
vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bad with pronunciations,
But
which
you got it.
I would definitely not have been able to put a name to when I was 15. Actually, who is that?
So it's like the character that you would probably most know is like the Princess and the Frog. I haven't seen the movie, but the bad guy is based off him. So it's like a coat and
Mhm.
tails. For Haiti, it's the traditional like burial garb. I looked this up today to make sure I wasn't just like imagining it, but no, it's like kind of a mythological like a folk character kind of, but they like, you know how some people back in the day believed in like Paul Bunyan but for real kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
how it's like folklore but there were real people who really believed it kind of thing. And there was a in real life, from the 50s to the 70s, a leader who was like a really despotic leader who played up the image of this character to like um increase his mystique. And it was a very like, if anyone talks bad about him, he has actual death squads, just go kill them kind of regime. So, you know,
That is a real, yeah, really specific reference.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's laced throughout history. When you look at like the article about it, there's it's in a bunch of stuff.
Hmm.
I don't know. I recognize the imagery right away. It's like, you know, the skull face like top hat guy, like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Oh, and 2 + 4 × 5 says, oh, first Vale says Trickster is less than Regent is less than Panacea with like the heart greater thans. Things you don't expect in Worm podcasts. And then Vic, hard eyes because of all the sexy names in a list. 2 + 4 × 5 says, my top 10 favorite characters in Worm are in order from 1 to 10. Taylor, Tattletale, spoiler, spoiler, Panacea, spoiler, spoiler, Rachel, spoiler, Alec.
Hmm.
Interesting. Um, Vale says Gilbert Godfrey was already on my mind because of someone told me he did a live read of sections of 50 Shades of Grey as a joke. I
Oh
found it and it
God.
was horrifying. I've seen that. It's something to behold. Um, yeah. Vic says he's a 3, but wears a top hat and is an incel. Vic says he's a 10.
I have questions.
Um, Vale, Taylor, Tattletale are my top two. Also, 100% Taylor is my favorite character in anything I've ever read. She took over top from Matt Cawthon. I'm not familiar with this Matt, but I'll take your word for it that he is a formerly list-winning character.
All right.
Anyway, I really so we've I think we're back to here. Yes.
Yeah. So we've got Trickster introduced, walked in. He's followed by three more capes in red and black. So there's a girl with a sun motif, a guy with bulky armor and a square mask, and a creature so large it had to crawl on its hands and knees to get through the door. Um, Taylor notes it was hard to describe, approximating something like a four-armed hairless gorilla with a vest, mask and leggings in the red and black style its team was wearing, 6-inch claws tipping each of its fingers and toes. I really love the Travelers, and I think they have some of the coolest powers, so I'm
Yeah,
excited.
well, especially okay. So they all have cool powers, but ballistics is a little basic. It's still like really awesome, especially in practice. But I think like Genesis is amazing. Trickster, like because of all the situations
Yeah,
it causes and like just how like good he is with his power and like how I don't know. It's so dynamic and more interesting than other similar powers in other media. Um
yeah.
and then like Sundancer just like it's so much that it's like I like it because it's overwhelmingly like and like it she's got an interesting dynamic with her power is what I'll say for like zero spoilers. Um
Hmm.
yeah. Um oh the chat says 2 plus 4 times 5 saying I should read Wheel of Time. I think I started the first book back in middle school. Vic says, I feel like Trickster's power was a great fit for him. Agreed, agreed. And then, unlike most of them. Yeah, yeah, most of the Traveler's powers don't fit them very well. Vale says, Wheel of Time is very fun, with some parts hard to read due to extremely dated views. If you can live with that and get past the bad, the good slash high points are incredible. Yeah, maybe someday. My time's pretty full with this. um, so getting back to the thingy, Goyle casually name drops their group, the Travelers, and he gives off real smug, in the know guy vibes. This is a common vibe from certain mastermind style capes, including like Tattletale. Um, Giving off the idea that they casually know more than everyone else as another way to show strength, their like version of posturing, of course, as well as like the fact that Coil comes in alone, like that in itself is posturing because he has no, well, they don't know what his power is, but like seemingly he is just a regular, as far as his body. As opposed to someone like Kaiser showing up with a bunch of capes. And then I know, oh yeah, this was my fake Coil quote. I know all the teams, even the ones that aren't local. I'm so mysterious. Coil, probably.
That's actually what how you just said that is how I imagine his voice in my head. So 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
He's like that guy, you know.
he totally is.
Uh, okay. Yeah, so then Trickster says that they're in town because it's too interesting to pass up. This being the situation with the ABB, then does a quote fucking formal bow to everyone and says his name to the room. Also, definitely something he would do. Uh, Drew asks if he knows the rules, and Trickster's like, yeah, yeah, no powers, no fighting. We've heard it all before. It's like close enough. And Trickster goes to sit down with Skidmark fuming in his booth.
Yeah, yeah. And to
Literally,
address, yeah,
the randos from out of town get a seat, and he doesn't.
yeah, they're like, who? And they them? Yeah, yeah. Because it's like from the skid mark perspective, disrespect after disrespect. But on the other hand, he did name himself Skid Mark on purpose. Uh, so
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? 2 plus 4 times 5 says I had to Google what is a TiVo while reading Worm for the first time. Therefore, I'm used to outdated stories. I don't think
Do
that's the outdated necessarily that Vale is talking about. I think mm, you know maybe uh worldview on certain other topics that are more important.
you
But I have heard that thing before that people don't know what the TiVo is when they're first reading. Um, and it was funny. I heard one like review of it from these teenagers, and one of them was saying, uh, they said, yeah, maybe it's just like a future device they have because they have more technology in that universe. And I just thought that was so funny because it's like such a dated device that they don't know what it is and they think it's future tech.
TiVos aren't that old, are they?
They are niche enough that I think as soon as people had the term DVR, they stopped using TiVo because
Oh,
that's just like a branded DVR. Um,
that makes sense.
and like I had a DVR when I was like 11 or 12, something like that. And so like that's nearly 20 years ago that like in a regular sort of household you could afford to have like a cheap DVR.
Mm.
So, yeah. I felt late to the game on the DVR party. And yet still. And Greg said about my coil voice, basically Pegasus. And yeah, he is the Maximilian Pegasus of this story.
Oh no, I'm never gonna be
It's
able to unsee that.
it's me, Maximilian Pegasus. Ah, yes, Kaiba.
And then
Um,
she exploded again.
Vic says, "Bruh, coil has no shame." Um,
Yeah.
let's see here. So, Quill decides to start the meeting. No one thinks that Lung will be coming to the meeting about defeating Lung. And then I had thought to myself, honestly, I would be concerned about having this meeting and like Lung or Bakuda knowing about it because I don't think they would honor neutral ground. And I had like the basic idea of like what if Bakuda would bomb the location, and the more far fetched idea, but I didn't write it down, but I thought about it about what if Lung picked a small fight somewhere to get into a bigger fight with cops, to get into a bigger fight with capes, to go burn down Somers Rock while in full dragon form, while everybody was inside. You know what I'm saying? So,
That would be
like,
awesome.
them knowing about your meeting would be pretty bad in this situation. Because you can say
Yeah.
neutral ground all day, but it's only neutral till it's not. So,
I guess like would the ABB would he be confident that he could take all of them on though? Or
I think he'd be confident that he could do a bombing run and escape, or that they could like send in a Bakuda bomb with a launcher,
yeah.
because her bombs can take out people who normally are like not killable by like normal explosives.
Mhm.
Like someone like Hookwolf could get killed by a Bakuda bomb, whereas I don't think a normal explosive could necessarily kill Hookwolf. It would have to be like so like
Yeah, yeah.
powerful that I don't know. Yeah, but yeah. Oh, there's some chats. You wanna talk
Mhm.
about them chats?
Yeah, so Vale says, imagine if the lung and the ABV did come though. I would like if they just rolled in and started talking with everyone, that would be great. And then Vic says, also, why does Coyle lead the meeting? I'd be so annoyed. Yeah, he kind of just assumes leadership.
But I mean,
Um,
that's the point. Is that's his power play. He totally nails that little aspect. He situates himself as leader, and no one like interrupts that role. At least in, I'd have to
yeah.
reevaluate for 5.2, but definitely for 5.1, which I've poured over more. He doesn't really get dethroned from that position.
Mm.
Yeah. So he
Two
nailed
plus
that. Anyway, go on.
2 plus 4 also says, like, imagine if Lung just showed up and was like, yo, what up?
God.
It'd be great. I don't know if it's his style, but I would love to see that. Oh, and Vale has a really good point on like who's going to lead the meeting though. Like no one will allow the racists to lead it or the dealers. The undersiders are new. ABB isn't there. Trickster and team are visitors. Yeah, Faultland's mercenary. Yeah, actually, like with that, it does kind of seem like the best choice. Is
Yeah,
there? That's all the major teams there, right?
that's correct. Yeah, I think I mean I agree with Vale. I think that like Fault Line being a mercenary is the biggest stopping block, and then Gru being like too new. Like agreed, but like I think Gru's the next most likely to lead it. I think if Coil hadn't done that, Gru would have been the one to lead it and to propose the alliance.
Mhm.
So I think he'd be second to do it. Um, Faultline would always defer to other groups, I think. But anyway,
Yeah.
then Vic said, "No one leads communism." Heart. Um, yeah, that's. One of the other things is that like there is always like sort of a pseudo leader to the Undersiders. Even later on, when they like decide to have an official leader and stuff, it is always like more of just an organization of people who have like common goals. They don't really like rarely ever is there like a call that somebody makes and is like, I'm the leader, so you gotta do X, Y, or Z. Like it doesn't really ever come down like that. And there's usually group consensus and they like I don't know. It's just like a different, I think, better leadership style than like most of the other groups we see, which are like
Mhm.
enforced hierarchies.
Vale says Hookwolf could get defeated by Parahuman Velcro. Yeah. Imagine if he was just like stuck somewhere for the rest of the story. He just stuck to the wall.
Yeah, stupid Hook Wolf.
Oh, that
Um,
rascally Hookwolf.
I that fucking Hook Wolf. Um, he gets what's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, what? Um, 2 + 4 × 5. I just woke up my dog by laughing really hard at imagining Hook Wolf versus a Velcro Tinker. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we were here.
Mhm. Yeah, so, meeting starts. Coyle goes on to say that 35 people are already confirmed dead from the bombings, and there's like literally war in the streets with gunfights between the ABB and the military who have actually come into the city to fight them. We get some comments from others to characterize them and keep the discussion moving forward. Um, so for Kaiser, he's like, it is inconvenient. And we see from Kaiser saying this that he is a smug douche, regardless of the audience to the conversation. Um, Faultline says they're being reckless and kind of shows she doesn't care about the people that they're killing, but cares more that they're not doing it in a measured way, which Coyle agrees to wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I mean, Fault Line in some scenes is sympathetic, and maybe she's putting on a front, but like a lot of times, not so big on Fault Line.
Yeah.
Um, I know that like theoretically the Undersiders also have kind of similar ideas about things, but when it comes down to it, you see them like fight S class threats over and over again, and not for
Hmm.
pay. So you know, um, Coyle says the ABB can't sustain this, and it could have been even advantageous in other circumstances. But the current situation has brought in large-scale hero and military reinforcements. Gru says that Bakuda is the key to ending this, even though Lung is the leader. He explains that how she kidnapped people and they had bombs implanted so they're under Anakin Skywalker blackmail. And in my Jake Lloyd impression, they blow you up. Boom. Then continues, and I mean, Groot definitely does that, back in the day, especially because they talk about watching the alternate universe Star Wars. He definitely knows not only the original quote, but also the alternate universe Jake Lloyd. So yeah.
Yeah.
And, Jake Lloyd is a constant across all universes. That's one thing, even though he's after the split point. It's pretty crazy. Um, They continue to say that they can't kill Bakuda and end it because all the bombs she made will blow up. And I think it's a good thing that they forced the. Or no, that's not where it was. It was. Where's the. Did I delete the thing? Um, Oh yeah. Oh no, I did write it. I was spacing out. Okay, so it's a good thing for the forced ABB recruits that Bakuda probably has tons of bombs other places than just hostage bombs, because I feel like Coil and Kaiser would just decide that the hostages were collateral damage, and
Yeah,
like,
that would absolutely be in character for them.
yeah, they fucking suck. Coil wouldn't care, and Kaiser would be actively for it.
He'd be a smug douche about it in the meantime as well. I
Oh,
guess they both would be in different ways.
Vic said Hookwolf and Jack are perfect for each other. Um, Stony Face, the worst. And yeah, they really are. They're like just these, just yeah. We'll have plenty of time to talk about Jack later. I don't want
Yeah.
to go off on a tangent about that forever. Imagine how annoying Mandela effect theories are in the Wormverse. Ah,
Oh
yeah,
man.
jeez. Um, anyway,
Plus, yeah. Right. So then, after that discussion, Gru reaches into the darkness he has around his body and pulls out a package that has burned DVDs of the footage they stole from Bakuda's camera. So the Undersiders finally get their real big dog moment, more than just Gru, quote, verbally chumping Skidmark, which is totally a thing that happened. Um, with the timing, when the camera was dropped in the video, obscuring kind of the end of their fight with Bakuda, uh, the footage actually starts like right when Park Ji-hoo was killed, and then a second bomb goes off, and the camera records the sounds of just a bunch of gunfire, but doesn't actually show the Undersiders making their hasty retreat. So, like, the footage is definitely such that if you only watch the footage, you'd be like, "Damn, how did they even get out of there?" Or, quote, maybe, "Oh my god, what is wrong with that Regent guy?" Because he's like talking about how cool the bomb was.
yeah, I
But
forgot to sort of mention it in the slightly above description, but it also includes the whole conversation between Regent and Bakuda.
yeah. But I guess like one of the important parts of the video is the video actually has Bakuda spilling a bunch of information about how she's been operating, and kind of beyond that, the video is definitely like more big dogging or posturing for the Undersiders. They're It's like presented in a way that just shows that they're strong and not to be messed with. It like shows the situation's really shitty, but like they're at the meeting, so they're okay. Or at least they're giving off the impression that they're okay.
Yeah, yeah. Despite Skitter having a concussion and being sort of low key confused a lot right now, and Regent not really having powers at the moment, the Undersiders show up and act like they're totally unfazed by the death fight at the storage lockers. And the ruse works. Success! The other teams don't even pick up on it. Um,
If I had if I had $1 for every time Taylor was like grievously injured and just hiding it, man.
yeah, it's just all day, every day. Um,
Yeah.
2 + 4 × 5 says about the Mandela effect thing. Yeah, just like why is Justin Bieber's name spelled like Bieber in Earth Aleph? Yeah.
Is the timeline far enough along that Bieber would be alive in the Wormverse?
No, he totally wouldn't be. That was just an oversight. We talked about it in the chapter when he gets mentioned.
Okay.
Because the split is in '82, but yeah, he does. They're like, I'm not. She was. I'm not like the other girlsing. And
Mhm.
mentions Bieber.
Uh, right. Um, so Taylor describes or calls attention to the subtle posturing
Oh,
from the
she
other
was
groups.
describing Alex looks as Justin Bieberish.
Ah,
Anyway, sorry.
no, no worries. Yeah. So Taylor's talking about all this subtle posturing, which we thought was pretty funny because they didn't really come across as that subtle most of the time. Um,
Yeah.
quote, Coil is all drama here, and I'm going to pass this to you to read because I think you can do the voice.
Oh yeah. So, Coyle let the word hang in the air as he cracked each of his knuckles on his right hand individually. We're in agreement. The ABB cannot be allowed to continue operating. I know I didn't do it quite the same way, but he's more self-serious in this moment.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, The
Oh,
note that Willem has here is that Coil pretends to be all prim and proper, but he's really a messy bitch who loves drama.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
So the people in the room generally agree with this. Coyle says they'll make a truce, even with the law enforcement, make it clear that they're limiting illegal activity so that all eyes can press in on the ABB at once. This is so important that some of the crimers are agreeing not to crime. After
Oh,
agreeing to work with the groups they can cooperate with and ignoring groups they can't, Faultline brings up that she runs a mercenary group and won't get involved unless she gets paid. And if the ABB pays her, then she'll be on their side. Coil infinity sighs and says he'll pay them to have them on his side. I'd prefer to keep this matters to I'd prefer to keep matters simple. Yeah.
well, say what you will about Faultline, but she's very upfront about what she wants, so that's respectable in a
She's
way.
there for the monies.
Yeah, don't
Oh
need to
yeah,
question
yeah,
their
sorry, I
intent.
should add. I'd prefer to keep matters simple, Yugi boy.
It just seems so right.
Yeah,
Now I'm
it's
imagining
perfect.
Pegasus wearing the Coil costume though, and that's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean the coil costume is generally uncomfortable to
Yeah.
imagine. He doesn't even have a top hat.
Would that make it better though? Like, would
It
that
would make
really
it slightly better
like
to me. To me.
skin tight skin tight suit and top hat is like a weird combo.
It's very slightly better than skin tight suit with no top hat. Right
Anyways,
now he's full green
so
manning.
Coilin asks, and yeah,
Sorry, no, I was
what's
just
up?
I was just saying he's full green manning right now, and I was just like laughing. I couldn't keep it in.
Yeah, Coil is very uncomfy in more than one way.
Yeah.
He's like, I guess there's more on this later, but he always struck me as the kind of guy who everyone like suspects is diddling, but no one has proof that he has done any diddling.
Oh
I don't
my
know.
god. He is like that. I mean, and you can read Vic's comments. They're on the same.
Hmm.
Vic says, Coyle's outfit makes me uncomfy. He's so confident. Can't even imagine him in my mind's eye without barfing.
So yeah, Coil asks formally for a truce, and Kaiser agrees. Gru doesn't need to be asked. He says that this is what the Undersiders were already planning to propose, and Trickster says the Traveler is in. So hands were shaken around the table. Um, the villain truce is on, and they've banded together to stop the ABB.
Yep, yep. Um, 2 plus 4 times 5 says Coyle's costume is literally just like a black morph suit TM with snake painted on it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I guess it's like a morphin suit, but he doesn't have the armor panels, so that's what makes it scary. um, so Tattletale murmurs to Taylor, another moment of subtly taking Taylor under her wing with her burgeoning Cape career. Tattletale's pointing out how all the other groups are already plotting to take advantage of the situation. She's trying to like train Taylor to look for these kind of things. It's funny because it just reminds me a lot of how, and I don't think that she's like a kid like some people think, and like totally at the whims of Tattletale. I'm not that kind of person, but I do think it mimics how like Carol does the same kind of thing with Victoria.
Victoria.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I
and
guess maybe
then
slightly different perspective for hero versus villain, but same
yeah, but I
strokes.
mean like they even show like there's a scene with Victoria where she's recalling a memory of like her mom pointing out um like a cop who had been like who's essentially like an ally to Carol, and they were working on a case together, but like she's pointing out the power dynamics with him and his wife, how there were signs to look out for possible like abuse where
Mm,
the guy was like the wife was not talking and stuff in certain ways, and so she's pointing out these like little power dynamic issues between couples, even when someone's a kid. And I know that there's like a Cape situation, but Carol's
Hmm.
whole thing is that Cape life and real life fully overlap. So, and like
Yeah.
Tattletale kind of wants that too for Taylor's Cape career and like normal life to full overlap. So,
Yeah.
backseat gaming her whole life.
Oh, Vale says Tattletale also loves more than anything else to share things she knows that no one else figured out, and
Yeah,
that
yeah, for
Taylor,
sure.
yeah, Taylor is the perfect listener for that. Like she wants to know, and Tattletale wants to figure things out. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of the dynamic, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think of different parts throughout the story. Like, Tattletale is they kind of have like the closest thing Taylor ever has to like a quote unquote normal like girl dynamic where she's like dishing secrets and stuff. Like she just doesn't have that kind of relationship with Rachel, and then like Imp she's like combative with for the first while, and then like different people she meets throughout like she doesn't necessarily get along with. So
Hmm.
yeah. Oh, and Greg says, "Oh, that's why Tattletale ordered tea so she could spill it." Uh,
Yeah.
Oh man, Vic says concussed Taylor is even better since she knows less.
I mean,
Taylor
yeah.
is babby right now. Anyway,
So the chapter closes with Taylor. I turned back to the scene, the villains sitting around the table. It dawned on me just how much sheer destructive potential was gathered in the room. This could get complicated. Very much yes.
yes. So, if we had any final chapter thoughts, I mean, typical thing. Like, I think it's another great chapter, like most of them, and I think it introduces tons of characters and can be kind of confusing at first, but like it really gains a lot of richness when you know more, and I don't think it super overwhelms you because it doesn't like try and run down everybody's power. She only says the powers of the people she knows, so like she knows Purity, so we learn her power, and she knows the Fenya and Menya, so we learn their power. And I think that might be it. I think that might be literally it.
Has Purity had her interlude already?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I
Um,
always like despite there being like 10 billion characters in this book, I always feel like they're very well fleshed out. Like
I think
a
because
lot
of
of the
the
time.
cape names are so bold and evocative, like to me, that like they were
Yeah.
very easy to remember because of the nature of like
Hmm.
I find names like Faultline or like Gregor the Snail or like
Yeah.
Labyrinth or like Spitfire, like those are all really easy names for me to like say, "Oh, I know their deal." I kind of like I didn't really know what Faultline looks like, but in that I've heard a lot of people agree that they kind of think like this in the book sense of like my mind has this weird like go-to like placeholder like amorphous image of like them and their like mood and their like kind of position relative to the room. So I don't even have to necessarily visualize each character as long as I've got like an emotional vibe for them and like understand them a little bit, then I can like put them in a scene very easily.
Yeah.
And so I know not everybody like imagines books that way, but it's very easy for me to even without knowing what a character looks like, if I hear their like striking name and kind of know their power, I'm like, okay, they do this, like Trickster or Ballistic. Like Ballistic's a big guy, his power is very aggressive. Like he just needs to touch stuff to rocket it. So like, I can imagine him easily in a scene. And like
Hmm.
Sundancer's like, "Oh no." So I can imagine her running around being afraid. Uh, so
I'm just imagining Trickster being greasy now. I don't know why.
I imagine he does the deep bow and then does like the Gene Wilder like oh no I've toppled over and then stands up and then does the big dramatic showy thing and he's like I wasn't injured after all, and everyone's like, we didn't care.
I guess I will apologize again in advance, but Trickster is not one of my favorite characters, so sorry to Victoria in the chat.
Oh, um, I like Trickster fairly well. I'm not one of them Trickster haters. I understand his flawed character.
But he has a really, really awesome power, so
Oh yeah, he does. He does. Let's not get it twisted. Oh, and I
yeah.
wanted to why does Kevin hate Trickster? What the hell? So before we begin chapter 5.2, I wanted to put a content warning for anybody that there's a scene between Brian and Rachel that's kind of domestic violence-y, and the artwork for this chapter depicts the scene. So I will say before I'm changing the artwork, but yes, that scene does happen in this chapter.
I to answer like why I dislike Trickster, it's not really that I hate him. I actually like really like his character and how it develops, but maybe spoilers semi like for when we learn more about where the travelers came from. I just like personally don't agree with any of the decisions that he made, and yeah,
Yeah, it can be hard to
yeah,
get over stuff sometimes. Um, Uh, Vic says it's not too graphic, but I was feeling problematic. Yeah, Vic had wanted to do a warning before we switched to it, so but is currently saying it's not too graphic. I think people will be able to handle it, but I think it's fine that we put a warning before it. Um,
mhm.
so um, so what was I saying? I just spaced out. I don't remember what I said. Oh yeah, yeah, about hating a character, like not hating the character, not agreeing with their actions. Yeah, I think sometimes when a character is doing enough things in a row that you don't agree with, it can be hard to um like even if you think they're cool and stuff, it can be like, come on, about whatever person. Like I can
Yeah,
definitely imagine that. Like ending up upset with a character based on like there's a character in this book that's already been introduced that way later in the story I'm like, come on. So yeah, I think she's great, but she starts out just a troubled youth, and later on I'm like but anyway,
right.
yeah, I'll let you take the lead. So Kevin wrote this summary, so it shall be more in his voice than either mine or Victoria's.
All
Vix.
right, and then let's kick off into 5.2 then. So yeah, for 5.2 we pick up immediately following the previous chapter. So Coyle having assumed de facto leadership over the proceedings. He starts to bring the meeting to a close now that everyone's come to an agreement about stopping the ABB. And just because life can never be too simple, right before they wrap up, Coyle asks everyone if anyone has any like objections or beef with anyone. And of course, Hookwolf from Empire 88 speaks up because he's got a problem with Bitch.
Yeah. Uh, Hookwolf is introduced as dangerous. Beyond being physically intimidating, we get this context. Nobody to date had ever escaped the birdcage, the name that had been coined for the supervillain prison in British Columbia. Hookwolf, though, had escaped on no less than 2 occasions while being transported there. He was a killer, and thought nothing of murdering people if they didn't fit the Aryan ideal. In retrospect, I'm very surprised that he didn't already have a kill order on him,
Yeah.
which would make
Did he
someone
not?
like Faultline probably try and kill him on sight if they weren't in like neutral ground already, because she'd want the money.
Yeah. It probably helps that he is very difficult to kill.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of. There's a chance her power would work on him despite the Manton effect.
Yeah.
She might be able to cut him in half. Anyway, I was just imagining her slicing him and dicing him just back and forth because it doesn't seem to take a lot of effort for her. That'd
Yeah.
be, oh man. Hers is one of those powers that seems just like effortless when she uses it, which is what makes it powerful, like why she can take a building down on somebody.
Hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. Book Wolf is just bad news bears. I don't know, at least for me, like the way he's introduced just makes me feel really uncomfortable to know that he is there. He's like got that kind of presence around him.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um,
it's like, there are criminals and then there are like the criminals, and he's definitely in the latter category. So
yeah, he's there's like criminals with a heart of gold, and he's like a real fucking asshole. He's a real piece of shit, in the words of Tim Robinson or whatever. Whoever does the "I think you can leave" or "I think you should leave" that program, when he just keeps going, "Yeah, I was a real piece of shit before, a real piece of shit."
yep.
Um,
Oh,
mhm.
Vale says, I doubt a bounty for a kill order of a local strong villain member would tempt Faultline because she and her team would have to move away to avoid retribution.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I could see that.
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Oh, I could see his own team turning on him though during doing it through a proxy to remove a problematic kill order while profiting at the same time. I could imagine that. Like, I mean, Cookwolf is useful, but on the other hand, Kaiser's a real asshole.
Yeah. Turns out the Nazis are just like not pleasant people.
Yeah. And I was thinking if you want to keep
Yep.
going.
So Hookwolf raises beef with Bitch, and Brew and the rest of the Undersiders are noticeably surprised and they don't really know what's going on. Um, so we know from the Brutus interlude, and we quickly find out that the issue was the dogfighting ring she broke up. Um, Turns out it was an operation managed by the Empire, and specifically, it's one of Hookwolf's businesses. So he's taken great offense to that.
Hmm. Yeah. Immediately, we see a lot more posturing from everyone involved. To keep up the Undersider's image, Gru does not apologize and implicitly defends his team's reputation despite not knowing exactly what the issue is. Do you want to read the thingy or do you want me to?
I can read it. Yeah. So Gru gave Bitch a long look because remember, like he doesn't know exactly what happened. But
Mm-hmm.
then he spoke to Hookwolf. That's the kind of risk you run doing business in Broxton Bay. Capes can and will get in your way, hero or villain. Just like such a non-answer in my mind, but
Yeah,
it's
but
a
it's
good
pretty
point anyway.
good.
Yeah.
I like that as a like total blanket statement answer. He has no idea what happened. He's just like, it's fine. It's fine that we did that. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Real big leap of faith too, because he doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pick up.
Mm-hmm.
So Hookwolf and Bitch like then have an exchange specifically about the dogfighting ring. So they actually like talk about what happened, and neither of them back down. And kind of, I have written because of her or Bitch's natural disposition, but it's really because of like everyone's disposition. The situation starts to escalate. Like they're upset. No one's really taking fault or blame, and it's kind of like at this point, Taylor and the other Undersiders have kind of figured out exactly what Bitch did.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So 2 + 4 × 5 said Kaiser would totally do something like that, and then Vale said, "I wonder if everyone in the bar is avoiding swatting flies just in case Skitter might get mad about it." Definitely.
Well,
So
Cape's got a cape, so.
exactly, exactly. They gotta put flies on your face. Um,
Mhm.
Kaiser follows up with his own posturing, falling back on proceedings in the truce the villains had just agreed upon in the bar to back up Hookwolf in the dispute. Kaiser spoke. "Is that a declaration of war, Undersiders? We just agreed to a truce, if you recall." He was utterly calm, a stark contrast to Hookwolf.
Yeah, it's kind of like been brought up through conversations, interactions through this chapter and the previous one. But I like when I think about because the posturing and like the reputation of capes is an ongoing theme in the book, and I think that this chapter is like a really good example that hammers home how important the reputation is, like particularly for villains. Um, just kind of something that I thought was personally interesting is like I always read this section or read the Undersiders as Gru is kind of the person who just kind of like gets it, like whether it's because of how who was raised or his background, he like understands that it's important to project that strength and like to keep that respect. Similarly, like Tattletale has the powers and personality to understand that these are games that you have to play. And just for this point, I think Taylor kind of gets it too on a personal level because she's had to deal with similar things in her interactions with her bullies.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking about it, like, Rachel doesn't understand the dynamics that are going on here, but has a general sense of the same thing in terms of, um, like how she always makes sure to, like, get back at the person who hurt her, stuff like that. Like,
Hmm.
has her own basic level of, like, rep that needs to be upheld with retribution, kind of thing. But yeah, as we discussed previously, the leadership dynamic of the Undersiders is also interesting here. We see Gru taking an implicit leader role in the proceedings, perhaps because it's expected, even though we know from seeing the other Undersiders' interactions that they don't have a proper leader. Kaiser really calls this explanation to, or expectation into focus. You mean you can't stop your subordinate? Kaiser mused. I'm a douche.
Pretty much most of the things that he says. Yeah, I mean that comment, like, and Taylor comments on this in the chapter. Like, it puts Gru in a really hard spot because he can't tell the other villains that Bitch isn't his subordinate. Like, uh, but he also needs to like convey that he's in control of the team or like give off this image of strong leadership. So he's kind of at this like impossible situation. So he tries to divert the conversation by mentioning that like every cape has a pet issue and basically that dog girl is going to get mad if you hurt dogs.
Yeah. He has to play into their dumb optics of their worldview of what makes a strong team. Even though later he'll show them he'll show them all. Um but yeah. So Kaiser is a butt. Not something I'd pay attention to. I'm more of a cat person. And then because he has so many people there that he's got like half the room, he gets some modest chuckles, as I recall in the chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Gru here does a pretty good job holding down the fort, like kind of presenting the way that he needs to. But I kind of read this chapter as it being clear that the Empire has more sway at the villain table. Like Kaiser's able to maintain just a cold, like I'm in control tone. Um, it's Taylor comments that he's like clearly bullshitting the Undersiders about Hookwolf being out of town and not knowing about the dog thing. I don't know. I kind of just read this as the Empire just doesn't really care, and Kaiser demands money or blood as restitution for breaking up the dogfighting ring.
Yeah. Sadly, Kaiser tells a better joke here than any in Taylor's entire career. She tries the, "Are you kidding? I think Sabrina the Teenage Nazi is a fucking good one. That's like an all timer. I know it's a quip in her own mind, but it rules."
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, so eventually, the situation diffuses. The Undersiders and the Empire agree to postpone discussion of the issue until after the ABB has been dealt with. The meeting wraps up. Notably, Coyle asks to speak to Faultline as the villain teams go their separate ways. At this point, it's implied by the interaction in the last chapter that Coyle is securing payment to Faultline's mercenary group for their assistance in the fight with the ABB. Vale says, "It's as close as she gets."
Yeah. But I feel like it's funnier when she makes a joke because she doesn't do it very often. So
I also think it's funny. I think it's almost like a joke every time she smiles when something cruel happens. To me, that's a joke.
Yeah.
I can let
Hmm.
my worm feelings out. I feel like if somebody's listening this far into the podcast stream thing, they've got to understand what worm is. And sometimes you let the bad feelings out, like watching Taylor
Yeah.
do something. Um,
Yeah.
Taylor is.
I want to.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. I had mentioned the Coil thing in the notes just because I thought it was interesting that Coil was the one that stepped up to pay Faultline. Um, Maybe some posturing, but also just clearly implying that he has a shit ton of money in my mind.
Yeah, definitely implying that, and also that he like wants this dealt with quickly, and he's
Hmm.
willing to. Um, I mean, relatively, if you're paying a large sum of money for a group shared thing, like the way that um he is in the Empire 88 is not, maybe it's lowering your resources against that other group later. He's still willing to do that. Um,
Hmm.
but then, yeah, Vel said instead of encountering Bakuda to learn about pain and fear, she has a run in with truly comic villain. She spends the rest of the book trying to tell jokes in every fight. Oh
Do
no.
I don't remember. Do Uber and Leet try to make dumb one-liners?
I think they would, but they got like knocked over so fast, and like Taylor was trying to put moths in their mouth and stuff.
Oh, just shoving bugs down holes.
Mm, that's what you gotta do.
Like, yeah,
So were you picking up here, or was this me?
I can pick up. So the Undersiders leave, and Gru is like noticeably angry with Bitch. It's kind of understandable because her actions like put him in the difficult situation that we just read through, and he had to improvise to try to save face. Um, so they like talk a little bit as they're walking out of the meeting, and there's tension because Bitch only really knows how to respond with aggression, and Taylor notes that there's this uneasy atmosphere. I think the quote from the chapter is, "We walked in grim silence past three different stories before he lashed out," and that's just like the anticipation that something is about to go down.
Yeah, and this is where content warning again. This is where we switch to the other art. And so this is our 5.2 with Brian attacking Rachel. Um, After walking sufficient distance that no other villains could see them, Gru physically forces Bitch into the doorway, pinning her to the door with his arm around her throat. He keeps her there for several seconds as she struggles, it's clear she's unable to physically overpower him. The violence descends into uncomfortable domestic territory. I hate this, Rachel. You make me do shit like that you make me do shit like this. That when I say things like that, I sound like everything I hate most in this world. But that's just the way you play things. It's the only time when you're willing to listen. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I think this like really short passage from Brian says a lot because I think we know at this point that Brian's dad was kind of a hard ass, and when he says things like "I sound like everything I hate most in this world," it's easy to imagine him like picking up what he's doing now from his own upbringing and the way that he's dealing with Bitch. I mean, she continues to struggle. She tries to get some jabs in at him, but he's like just physically in control of the situation and keeps the pressure on. And like I know he's Brand's generally presented as like a pretty like good guy or at least a reasonable guy, but he is a scary SOB when he wants to be.
Yeah, yeah, he really goes for it here. Gru went on. You know what you did wrong? You didn't fucking tell us. It made me look weak. It made all of us look weak. Yeah.
Yeah, so he goes on to just lay down this verbal smackdown. While this is going on, it's not super clear, at least to me, if Bitch like really gets it. Um, she reacts like how, at least how I would imagine like a problem child to react. And when I say problem child, I just mean like a child that's done something wrong but isn't old enough or at the point where they understand what they did wrong. Um,
Yeah, where it's you're not communicating with them in a way that they understand, so they just think that you're like picking on them, and it just seems like no matter what they do, um, they're in trouble.
yeah. And like for me, like this is a parallel to domestic violence that's pretty uncomfortable because like situations like this, like it goes down like this sometimes. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's pretty bad. And all this, I can't do the voice, but all of this is as implied by the image through his like darkness voice. So he sounds like super like ghosty right now, you know?
hmm
Always talking about how his voice is hollow. Um anyway, so Tattletale cuts in playing good cop to Brian's bad cop, trying to talk Rachel down without physical intimidation. Brian backs off after she steps in. Tattletale shows relatively more empathy for Rachel versus Groot chokeslamming her into the door, but she's still close to flying off the rails and is clearly upset. It's implied that Tats is trying to use her power to defuse the situation. She makes it clear that her issue is the lack of communication that's been happening. Because both of the times that her and have tried to get through to Bitch before haven't worked.
yeah, it's an interesting interaction to me though that like Bran just backs off when she cuts in, like
Yeah, it's
kind of an
actually
unspoken thing.
I hadn't thought about that, but like yeah, when she cuts him off, he doesn't like try and maintain the situation or whatever.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, the interaction cuts short here because Taylor notices the travelers are headed their way and don't want to let the other team see them infighting. Uh, Something interesting is Taylor also notes that Regent's like quiet through the entire exchange. And at this point, I wrote she pins our favorite sociopath's lack of participation on his injury and lack of sleep. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know how much we know about Regent's character at this point, but like he's generally not too perceptive on emotions or doesn't react normally. So
but he's usually pro violence regardless of the scenario. So
yeah,
I think that's notably different. She mentions in the chapter, I think, that he's on painkillers.
hmm yeah, he's kind of out of it. But and the main thing is like Taylor is actually really saddened by the fighting. From the chapter, she says, "I liked these guys. Like even bitch. I don't know. I suppose it would be a stretch to say I liked her, but I could maybe respect her for what she brought to the table." And yeah, Taylor just like doesn't want to see them fighting.
Yeah, yeah. And at this point, this is probably one of the most positive takes we've seen on Bitch from Taylor's perspective. She falls back into her internal struggle with being a double agent for the Undersiders, or her more accurately, Taylor continues to delude herself into thinking she's only doing the villain thing to gather information for the good guys. She engages in some thought which I would consider to be unhelpful procrastination. And so it was the day that I turned information over and said goodbye to the Undersiders, as the day I wanted to transform myself. Start transforming Skitter into a hero in the public eye, doing what I could to repair my image and redefine Taylor into someone more confident and outgoing and brave.
Yeah, I have that listed because I, at least to me, like that's a really common mental trap where you convince yourself like after I accomplish X, I'll start making changes. It's always like a worrisome thing to see because there's always something else to hit or something else to do. At this point, like it's interesting to me to see where Taylor's going to go from here because I think she tends to like hyper fixate on a single goal and she's got this idea in the head that like, oh, okay, after this thing, I'll start being good.
Right, right. Yeah, and you know, there's no ETA on X almost regardless of the ex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, So immediately, though, Taylor realizes that she cares for the others. She muses that she would feel worse, even italicized, betraying them to the Protectorate if they were on bad terms. She wanted to tell herself that she had one successful set of friendships before severing ties to. And this should be in bigger air quotes. This should be in like 30,000 sets of air quotes. Do the right thing. Um, the chapter closes with a Taylor Rachel interaction. As I glanced back at Bitch, it struck me that this had to suck worse for her. I felt a twinge of sympathy.
Yeah, I want to call this out because I think Taylor actually shows a lot of care towards understanding Bitch, and it's kind of like the start of some of her efforts to really connect with her. Um, I think it's nice to see because one of the core strengths I think of Worm as a whole is like it's good at making you sympathize with characters or really like showing how bad people get to where they are due to circumstance and upbringing. Um, I think Taylor winds up being one of the few people that actually extends Rachel the benefit of a doubt, and it's really sweet when it does eventually happen. And there's kind of like the starts of that relationship here. I just wanted to call out like the last few lines of the chapter
Mm-hmm.
where she's talking to Rachel about like what she did with the dogfighting ring. So Taylor asks her, "You stopped them?" She turned her head my way, met my eyes, made them bleed. Good, I replied, which is like really badass, but also like one of those interactions where I feel like, it's actually a plus for Rachel.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I think that's a really good chapter end. Do we have specific closing thoughts on this chapter? I think it. I guess I'd say that the first it's like real splintering between the team, and it shows that it's not the first splintering, it's like
Mhm,
continued message of like the team has always had these problems. Even though they're effective and stuff, they clearly have these pitfalls where like their heaviest hitter is the person that they can get least on the same page with them.
mhm.
So also like we get to see like more detailed ways of like the little like the power games that a shitlord like Kaiser plays,
Mhm.
and how he has like tons of proxies through like Hookwolf and stuff.
Yeah, he like lets him keep the like douchebag attitude that he has because he can just be calm through everything and let the other crazies do the scaring. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, he's able to like he's like, oh, I can be above it all, and why aren't you as calm and douchey as me? And so he can do that to people while he's got people literally directly under him who are like, ah, my dog fighting ring, ah. Um, you know, that's my approximation of yeah,
Nice.
it makes him seem real intimidating.
Mhm.
Anyway, what are your thoughts on the chapter?
I think so. I'm a sucker for all of like the team up events that happen through this story. Like whenever a bunch of different teams work together on something.
Mm-hmm.
So it is really hype in that respect.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love I love how many different like groups were introduced here.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like on reread, because this is either probably like my third or fourth time reading through these chapters. It's really cool how much thought's given to all the like posturing games because it's such a big part of the universe or like the world building. It's cool to see.
yeah, yeah. And Brockton Bay is like kind of big, but you can see the fact that you can put all the major players in one room.
Right, right.
um, yeah, and it's interesting like which people they bring with them because It's the entirety of the team for three of the groups, but the Travelers hold some people back. Coil obviously has a bazillion people hired under him, and Empire 88, even just in terms of capes, there's another like dozen that aren't here.
Oh, yeah, there's that note, I think it's in this chapter, but I didn't bring it up, where Empire 88's big enough that like capes would come from out of town to join them
Oh
if they
yeah,
believe the
well
ideology.
that's right here. So
Oh,
Victoria
sorry.
had yeah, Vic had pulled this out for the characters section. So we can read that directly if you want to just quote the
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so for there's this quote for Kaiser, after he's introduced. That wasn't even Kaiser's entire team. Aside from the rare exception like Lung reaching out to Bakudo when she'd been at Cornell, it seemed that most groups recruited new members from within their own city. Kaiser was different. He was one of the better known American villains with a white supremacist agenda, and people sharing his ideals were either recruited from other states or they came to him. Most didn't stay with him for too long, for whatever reason, but it still made him the Brockton Bay resident with the most raw parahuman muscle at his beck and call.
Yep, yep. Um oh, Vale says, "I agree. Analyzing the writing, it holds up to the encounter, the people, the world, and serves many purposes at the same time. WB does this consistently. It's part of why his work is so beautiful." Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
And moving on from that Kaiser section, uh, only adding, he's a real son of a bitch. Um, uh, Purity. From my research online and digging through old newspaper articles, I knew Purity could create light and charge it with kinetic energy. She was like a human flashlight. If the light from the flashlight could punch through brick walls and tear city buses in half. As far as raw firepower went, she was up near the top of the list. A flying artillery turret. And I think she means for the city.
Yeah.
Because when you take into account someone like Legend, I consider Legend's power just like strictly better than Purity's.
Yeah.
And then
So
do you want to
she's
read?
really not. Yeah.
Oh, go
Look at
on.
it. She's really like not a human flashlight at all, but
Yeah,
the
that's just
explanation
what
still makes sense.
Taylor thinks. Um, uh, she is pretty powerful because of how like fast and whatever she is,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't know. Just the fact there's a cape with essentially the exact same power as her, but way better. That sucks.
Yeah.
Because even when you have a sucky power, you usually have a pretty unique power.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for Coil, yeah, the good representative quote of his introduction is Coil. Can't say as far as his power goes, but he's one of the most powerful players in town. Considers himself a chess master. You know, like a master strategist or tactician. Controls more than half of downtown with squads of top-notch personnel in the highest end gear, ex-military from around the world. If he even has powers, he's the only one in his organization who does. I nodded, almost the opposite of Kaiser in that department. I also think it's funny that Lisa is saying that.
Yeah. Anyway, Fault Lines crew. Um, we get this big description here. Fault line. I knew of her from my research. She was 20 something, and her straight black hair was a long, bristling ponytail. Bristling indeed. This is me jumping out of the quote for a second. It's bristling with spikes that if you try and pull her ponytail off, it'll spike your hand. Um, anyway, and it's pull away. It's a wig. Um, her costume was weird, approximating something like a blend of riot gear and a martial arts uniform and a dress. Four people entered the room. We'll go back to let's see here. Yeah. Now we have the art up on screen. Four people entered the room with her, and the two guys in the group were instantly the weirdest people in the room. I knew them by name, too. Neuter wasn't wearing a shirt, shoes, or gloves, which made it all the more apparent his skin was neon orange from head to toe. He had light blue eyes, dark red hair that looked wet, and a 5 foot long prehensile tail. Gregor the snail was morbidly obese, average height, with no hair on his entire body. His skin was milky white and slightly translucent, so you could see shadows beneath it, where his organs were. Like something, or like when someone else might have bad acne, he had bits of shell or scales crusting his skin. They looked almost like barnacles, but there was a spiral shape to them.
Yeah, I'll pick up.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have thought they were close by their body language, silence, and the sheer difference in appearance, but both had matching tattoos. Peter's was just above his heart, while Gregor's was on his upper arm. It looked like the Greek omega symbol, but upside down, maybe a stylized U. It's the matching tattoos. Um, the other two girls in Faultline's group were very normal by contrast. Labyrinth wore a dark green robe and a mask with lines all over them, and Spitfire wore a red and black costume with a gas mask.
I was surprised when Faultline deliberately walked by our table on her way to her seat, taking the long way around. As she passed us, she looked over Tattletale and me and sneered a little bit before taking the chair to Kaiser's right. Tattletale nodded. Faultline's crew does anything short of murder. You can say her personality sucks, you can say her powers suck, but I'll admit she's very good at finding hidden strengths in people that work for her. See those two guys? When it came to powers, they got a bad roll of the dice, became freaks that couldn't hope to pass in normal society, wound up homeless or living in the sewers. There's a story behind it, but they became a team and she made them effective. They're they've only messed up one or two jobs so far. And then I of course have my character note about Moist. We can go back to the other thing. I just wanted to get this out of the way. Before I forget, Moist is only in this chapter, probably actually Mush. Got changed, as we learned mid stream, by Wildbow after it was pointed out to him that Moist was already a superhero character, well, supervillain character, in a different media property. Yeah, so Faultline and her crew. There's a lot to be said about these fools. They're really cool, I think. But we
Yeah,
do not learn a lot about them.
it's still like surprisingly well fleshed out for just being introduced here, though.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and let me think. For characters, we get in these things we get Skitter being all loopy. We get we get Brian. Brian's like, I'm gonna attack Rachel. This is the only thing that works. Ah! Um, we get Elisa being like, "Oh my God, Rachel, I am about to lose my patience with you. If you don't start communicating with us, you are grounded, young lady." Um, and then you got Alec all like,
Drone.
and then you got Rachel. Rachel's like, ah, nothing ever goes my way. Which is I often feel that way. Um, and we got some new arrivals, the twins with twin powers, Fenya and Menya. It's kind of interesting that twins would have twin powers, I guess. It's a little bit of world building.
Hmm.
Vale says, how would you suggest Brian and Lisa deal with Rachel? Um, okay, so short term, probably get home before dealing with this. Uh, Long term, not hit her. Uh, that's also in the short term. Um, I think that they basically start with the thing Lisa did, but calm down first. Um, and then, especially because at this point, Lisa can communicate with her better than anybody else. It should start as a message from Lisa. Um, and I mean, the other thing is that Lisa and Brian have built a bad rapport with her over the last 11 months when they've been a team. So, um, that's not great for their case. Uh, um,
Yeah, it's
it's hard to
hard.
say because they are the people they are. So it's like, um, probably yeah. I think I would just have only Lisa deal with it. With probably Taylor supervising. Um, yeah,
Like all things considered, I don't think they did. I mean, they didn't do a good job, but they didn't do like the worst job either. Just
yeah.
in
I
the sense
mean,
that like
it,
the
it.
normal villain thing would be to kick the shit out of her like entirely, right? So
I mean, they didn't do like the evil thing, but they were holding them to a higher standard than that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's hard for
let.
me to answer that because
Mhm.
we like Taylor figures out her Rachel's psychology later in the
Yeah, like her
story.
personality and like is able to interact with her in a much better
Yeah,
way than these guys ever are.
yeah. So like having that knowledge, my answer is like I want to use that information, but they don't really have it at this point. So
Right. I mean, short of Lisa, who kind of does.
yeah.
Um, but Vale said, "Let Alec take point?" Question mark because Lisa Brian have bad rapport. Hee that would be the best alt chapter ever. I don't know that that would go super well for Alec, to be honest.
Probably you'd probably
TBH.
just give her a high five, right? Like I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, either he would not make any progress or do anything, or he would uh just be terrible about it and get beat
Mm,
up. Um, yeah.
yeah.
But moving through some more characters that we met this time. So there's Purity, clearly just fully on board with Kaiser again, and her "I'm not a Nazi" stuff while she enters with a guy with a swastika tattoo who's her homie. Um, Alec takes point. The truce ends 11 minutes later. Yeah. Um, uh, and then you got Krieg. We don't know anything about him. He's apparently he was not mentioned as one who had left the organization, so he's just an Empire 88 guy. Night and Fog, they had moved to Boston, but they're back. There's some sort of duo who's strong enough to be just a duo in Boston, so uh,
Mhm.
probably not. Uh, no slouches, we'll say, in combat. You got Hook Wolf. I hate this guy.
Yep.
Um, we got Coil. Another
Hate that
douche,
guy.
but at least more fun. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and then we got Fault Lines crew. Much more agreeable, but still not the greatest. Um, I find Fault Line to be a very interesting character, but her morality is terrible. Um, uh, and like I don't, she's just like interesting. I don't like super love her, so I'm not like whoa. Uh, we got Neuter. He is the lizardman. He's a newt. He has neon orange skin and blue hair and eyes. And he's got like blue sclera, so it's not just like blue eyes the way people say. It's like he's got black eye dots with blue where normal people have white. Um,
Yeah.
and then Gregor the snail, he is like a semi-translucent snailman. Uh, he's pretty cool, but we don't know him yet. Labyrinth is in green. She don't talk much. Spitfire, stolen from Tattletale. Um, she spits fire. And not on the mic, only with the literal stuff.
Mm.
Um,
Like, we don't know for sure.
she may spit fire on the mic, but I'm just putting it out there. We probably would have heard about it.
Yeah.
Then we've got the group with Skidmark. He sucks. He uh he leads the worst gang. We don't just sell drugs to children. We sell drugs to everybody. We got the fakey cakes moist. We got Squealer. We don't know this, but Squealer's a tinker. Um, and then the true badasses, the travelers. We got Trickster. He tricks people. Sun Dancer dances. Ballistic.
Mm.
He goes ballistic.
John.
Genesis uses the Genesis machine from Star Trek 2. All right, nailed it.
Nail it.
Greg says Wildbow is big into double meanings. But yeah, do you wanna talk? I put this big group roster to do like a little review. Do you want to just briefly say anything about this lot? Any of them specifically? Any of the teams?
Um, Not too much to add. I think the merchants are presented in a really interesting way, in that literally no one respects them, and they kind of don't respect themselves with the names they chose. But
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are
they have
there.
terrible names.
Yeah, they are there. Um, the travelers are definitely presented as like super mysterious, and I think like even from here they're really cool. And yeah, the only other thing I'd add is just like reading through this coil, the way coil is introduced here. It just like there's like clearly other things going on, and he is clearly up to no good, and it makes me want to learn more about what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah. He's like slinking around, slithering in your garden.
Yeah, it's like the Nazis are being Nazis, and Faultline's crew wants money, but like I don't know what Coil wants.
Who could know? And he seems as suspicious as Kaiser. They're just like two non-trustworthy people.
Yeah.
Um, let's see here. And Vale put the I believe to be a sarcastic comment. Spoilers. What if someone hasn't heard of the Genesis machine? Sheesh. Um, and then yeah. I guess I think at this time I was probably the most interested in knowing more about the Travelers, especially with the 5.2, how it's that team specifically who's also looking at them at the bar and stuff,
Hmm.
like Trickster is watching them. Yeah,
Also, his name is Trickster, so
yeah, that's true. He's a tricksy one. He's a tricksy hobbit, as they say. Um, so for the powers, knowledge, and world building, we learn tons this time. I didn't write down all the stuff because we kind of talked about it the whole time, but we meet nearly 19, or no, not near, it was going to be nearly 20, but I realized it was 19 because I actually counted, I went back. So we meet 19 new capes in one chapter. We get a first glimpse of capes who underwent transformations when they got their powers to sort of new monstrous forms. Um, Oh, Vale says nomadic villain team with cool vibe. They are amazingly interesting. Sure, yeah, definitely.
hmm
Um, yeah. Do you want to talk about any of the world building from these two chapters? Since we kind of meet so many people, so much is happening.
yeah, just for the monstrous forms, bit of information. In this chapter, it's presented like when people get powers, there is just a chance that like it will screw you up physically, which is this is the first time that it's really brought up, right? So.
Yeah, yeah, and I had sort of thought when I don't know, when they presented the whole group and when we heard about two of them being monstrous, somehow in my mind, more of them had like, because Purity's all like glowy and stuff. I thought
Mhm,
more percentage of capes had like visual stuff going on, which certainly a lot of capes do, especially with their costumes. But like,
mhm.
let's say Clock Blocker was uncostumed and fighting Aegis or something. Like, none of them visually look different than human.
Yeah.
Neither does like Victoria or um, Tattletale or Bitch. They all just look like humans. Like Gru has a lot going on, but
Mhm.
Alec looks like just a guy. Yeah. I thought more people had like different appearances, but then I sort of reevaluated that and I was like, no, they just dress like freaks. They actually just have regular looking bodies and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's most of it. I also, just one more thing to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
I I actually thought the villain power dynamic was pretty well thought out, like in terms of all the different groups that were introduced and like the relative amount of power and respect that they would have, and kind of like the way they think about each other. Like Kaiser's like, I hate everyone here, but I will listen to you because I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think it really feels like, because they, they each have their chunk of power, like as much like small territory as Faultline kind of has. She has like the club that she owns and stuff. They
Hmm.
have a lot of relative power in just a direct cape fight. And
Hmm.
like Kaiser and Coil each basically own half the city aside from the ABB, like if you cut them out of the equation. And then the
Right.
Travelers, despite being out of town, like only the real brainiacs like Coil know this, but the Travelers have like incredibly high end powers.
Yeah.
So I would say that the Undersiders are, as a unit, relatively more powerful than like they are much stronger than the sum of their parts, whereas most of the groups are not. I think
Yeah.
Faultline's crew and the Undersiders are stronger than or are like more than the sum of the parts, but the Empire 88, the Merchants, and the Travelers aren't. And the Merchants have sucky powers and aren't. And the Empire 88 have like decent powers and a zillion dudes, and the Travelers have really good powers.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
oh,
agree.
yep, Vale's heading out. So we had the audience participation. Sorry, taking a little long. I'm going to read Vale's thing just in case they have a little longer. So the question was, um, what do you think of the interaction between Rachel and Brian? And then Vale had said, I think the interaction from Brian, suggesting this is common, is very sad because there's no good way to handle Rachel, and they have been here many times before, it seems. Every word related to Rachel visualizes as an angry, snarling dog up to the end, then a sad, chastised dog trailing behind. Rachel's parts are brilliant writing. Yeah, very
Mm.
good. And have a nice day, Vale. See you next week. Um, we are. Oh, the reply was super short. Loved how it was characterized, Rachel, out of all of it. Yep.
Hmm.
Bye bye.
Bye.
And I don't know that anybody else answered, so we kind of talked about it as we went. Unfortunately, I think that might be the whole audience participation meeting. Because we also have no new readers to answer the curious about question. Whereas, I mean, I can say that I think I was the most curious about the Travelers.
Hmm.
Especially because of, I would say, Genesis in particular. I was the most curious about Genesis. So,
Yeah, agreed. Because she's introduced at the same time as like Neuter and Gregor, so it's
yeah,
like,
so it seems like just another, like, cape with like a crazy body,
mhm.
but is not. Um, Spoilies. So, I'm going to start up the intro and outro music for Arc 5. Well, of course, who wouldn't be curious about a gorilla wearing a vest? Um, so starting this, and Kevin, I wanna thank you for being on. I guess I'll do the links first. The intro and outro music for this arc is No Escape, the Crime and Mystery edit by CO.AG Music. It's another song by them because they're a great source of copyright free music. They have tons of stuff on YouTube. I really like their stuff. And as long as you call them out in your thing, they are cool with you using their music. So that is pretty awesome. That's why I have them listed in the description, as well as the Discord link, and then the Patreon for the author of the work being discussed. Patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. So always a good resource, and we use that every week for the audiobook listen. So Kevin, any closing thoughts? I was just gonna say thanks for being on the stream, and thanks everybody for being in the chat.
Nothing in particular. Just thank you so much for hosting me, and it was great talking to you all today.
Cool. Bye.